With spooky season upon us, I decided to make a video that I've wanted to make for a while. This video was inspired by a trend started by the YouTuber Your Movie Sucks, where people made videos talking about movies, TV shows, and video games that scared them when they were children. Although I wasn't really scared of much as a kid, I mean, at one point I used to like staying up late to watch Courage the Cowardly Dog of all things. They say only a fool is scared of nothing, and so I scoured my memories for times that I was genuinely scared by the media that I consumed. And there are quite a few that I can remember. On that note, I must say, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing when media aimed at younger audiences deals with heavier subjects in an age-appropriate way. It's been shown that sheltering kids from being aware about difficult and scary topics can stunt emotional growth and make it harder for them to cope when those things actually come into play. Although some of the things in this video aren't exactly things kids need to be worrying about. And all kids are different. What may reassure and teach one child may stick with another for all of the wrong reasons. But I'm just japping. Now, without further ado, let's delve into the world of the things that scared me as a kid. Before we begin, it should also be noted that the entries in this video will be ordered roughly on when they happened from the earliest fears to the most recent, not on how scary they are. Just getting that out there before we start. Let us begin our journey with one of the most prominent fears of my early life. When I was a young child, from the ages of 3 to 8, I would not touch the channel CBeebies, which is one of the major toddlers channels in the UK. If I landed on it while channel surfing, I would panic and make sure to keep the remote in sight. The reason for this was one show, and that show was called Numberjacks. If you recognise the art style but haven't seen it before, that's because the Beanos meme came from here. Yeah. I just want to say, I was terrified of this show. And even that is a bit of an understatement. Heck, I was so scared of it I couldn't even bear to say the name of the show out loud at one point. If I even glimpsed a character from it, I would flinch. Around the time that I was scared of it, there was this children's activity magazine that had a picture of them on it, and because of it alone, I would avoid the magazine section in shops entirely in case it was there. That was how much it affected me. There are also a few other incidents I can remember that were associated with my fear of the show. When I was like 6 or 7, I was on a train with my mum and I was given a kids' meal for lunch. In the kids' meal, there was a bag of biscuits that had numbers printed into them. Although I was hoping she wouldn't, my mum proceeded to mention the Numberjacks because of this, and obviously kid me got scared and tried to move the conversation away from that. My mum did so, but as she did, she joked that one day I might change my mind about the show. You know what I did in response to that? I spent the rest of that train ride repeating in my head, I will not change my mind, I will not change my mind, I will not change my mind. Another time, I sat down to watch some TV one evening after school. But as I was about to turn on the TV, I began to think, oh no, what if it lands on CBeebies and shows the Numberjacks? This was long before we had a digital one, and when it opened it would like land on a random channel, I think. But then I thought, nah, it'll probably be fine. So I turned on the TV. Guess what channel it landed on, and guess what show was airing at the time. It just so happened to land on CBeebies, while CBeebies just so happened to be playing a rerun of Numberjacks. I was jump scared so hard by it. I changed the channel as quickly as I could, and I vividly remember sitting shaken while some ads played on the next channel. But what about the Numberjacks was so bad it made me that scared? Well, you see, it was all because of one character, and that character was named Spooky Spoon. Spooky was one of the villains of the show, and she's a spoon because apparently she likes mixing things up and stirring them. I have no idea what it was about her that scared me that much, as it was so long ago. Though she does have a habit of loudly screaming while lunging at the camera.
I am tired of all these lovely colours in the world because they make me look boring!
And occasionally breaking the fourth wall as well.
Look!
Hello, everyone. I'm back.
Looking back, with those traits aside, she's not really that bad. And if anything, it's kind of funny how sassy she is. but I can definitely see why 4-year-old me was scared of her and preferred to not have to see her. After a few years of fearing the show, I ultimately forgot about it for a while. Until around 2018, I randomly remembered it. I thought to myself, maybe I should rewatch some episodes and see if it really was as creepy as I remember it. I was young and probably only afraid because it looked creepy when it was probably fine. And so, as soon as I got back home, I searched the show up online and watched some episodes. And after watching those episodes, I honestly think I was right to be scared of the show. The villains are incredibly overpowered. They can manipulate, like, physics. They can do all kinds of things. They can manipulate mathematics itself, manipulate values, and cause all sorts of chaos. In one episode, called Interesting Times, the elder Numberjacks 7 regales 0 and 1, with a story about the time spooky spoons switched the day and the night, causing people to wash their cars and sunbathe in the middle of the night, go to sleep in the middle of the day, and put on their pajamas while playing football? As well as spooky, there's a whole other lineup of villains, though I don't remember any of those from my childhood, including the Shape Javer, who was probably the most tame out of all of them, the Problem Mob, which has a nice dog in its mouth, the Puzzler, who looks just like a random guy, but oh my gosh, what the heck? And the Number Taker, who kind of looks like a rejected Doctor Who villain. It should also be said, I've since learned that I was not alone in my struggles. Quite a while ago, while I was doing a math lesson, the subject of the show came up in a conversation, and I mentioned how scared I was of it when I was a kid. One of my classmates mentioned that she was afraid of Spooky Spoon and the Number Taker when she was young, and then our teacher came, and he said that he had to watch it alongside his daughter when she was young, and even he found it quite weird and creepy. So yeah, seems like a lot of people were scared of it. These days, to be honest, from what I can tell, I've become desensitized to it. Ever since I remembered it, I started to watch these YouTube poops of it, and now I've basically become desensitized to it, to the point that it's kind of strange to think that I was that scared of it at one point. If you have Gen X parents and grew up in the UK or France, chances are you may have heard of a show called The Magic Roundabout. The show became a cult classic in the UK after it was ported over from France and dubbed, and even my mum and her childhood friends were all fans of it. But I'm unfortunately not talking about the stop-motion version, which is very tame. Oh no. I'm talking about the 2007 CGI reboot of the show that happened after the 2005 movie. I've seen the movie and it's not the best, but it's alright. Heck, my family now has a tradition of watching it on Christmas Eve. No idea why, but it's funny, so When I was young, the show used to creep me out in a myriad of ways, mainly how unhinged everything seemed. I can't find the episode for the life of me, but I remember seeing this episode where Ermintrude sang too loudly and it shattered every single pane of glass in the village and caused light bulbs to explode, and it disturbed me for some reason. Aside from that, it was mainly the character Zebedee who scared me. In the movie, he is quite chill and serious, and barely in it for ages because it's implied he was killed off during a battle near the beginning, but that's besides the point. But in this, he's so overly happy most of the time that he comes across a bit insane. He also has a bit of a thing for playing tricks on the residents of the village with magic, and that also kind of added a layer to it, because that made him seem a bit, like, unpredictable. Like, you could just be doing around and then he'd come and mess with you. In one episode, he enchants Dougal's ball or something, and it comes to life and causes all kinds of havoc in Dougal's name. As a kid, I kind of didn't really like plots where someone would like pose as another character and then make them look bad, because I was bullied a lot, and one of their favourite tricks was accusing me of things I hadn't done to get me in trouble. If I remember correctly, Zebedee would appear at the beginning of every episode of the show, and it was a bit like a jump scare for young me. And I remember being a bit upset when I switched to the channel and it was playing the show's title sequence. And aside from all that, I don't really remember much about the whole thing, which is why this segment is so short, so let's move on. It's no secret that books aimed at children tend to have colourful illustrations, to give small kids the necessary stimulation, excite their imaginations, and ensure the story will stick with them for years to come. but sometimes these illustrations can be a bit too much for some kids. This next one happened when I was like 4 years old in reception, the UK equivalent of kindergarten. At the end of each day in reception, our teachers would sit us all down and read a story from a book to us to finish the day. And one afternoon, we did this like normal. That day, the story we would be told was Michael Rosen's adaptation of the children's rhyme Little Rabbit Foo-Foo. If you don't know what happens in that story, it's a rhyme about how the titular rabbit was whopping field mice on the head, so a good fairy came down and warned him that if he did not stop his wicked ways, she would turn him into a goon or some other variant, giving him 3 chances to change his ways. But the disobedient rabbit does not stop the head whoppage and instead moves on to bigger targets than the field mice. And so, at the end, the fairy transforms him into a goon as punishment for his sins. It's meant to be a pun, hare today, goon tomorrow. But this was when things got a bit scary for young me. In the Michael Rosen adaptation, which was illustrated by Arthur Robbins, during the transformation sequence there's a rather creepy illustration in which the titular rabbit turned goon appears to have multiple eyes, which I now understand to be the drawn equivalent of a smear frame. Upon seeing this, 4-year-old me got scared and decided that they had seen enough and didn't want to have anything to do with the story. And then things got worse. As it turned out, the book the teacher had read came with a DVD with an animated version of the story in the same style, and now all of us had to experience the horrors of the book all over again, but in movie form. I completely forgot about this memory for the longest time until a few years ago when I came across a copy of the book in a charity shop, and after that all of the memories came flooding back. Around the same time, or possibly a bit later, I was given the books in the Stripy Horse series by Jim Helmore. This series follows the sentient inanimate objects in a charity shop coming to life and going on adventures at night, namely the titular Stripy Horse, who is meant to be a plush toy. I used to like reading the book Look Out, Stripy Horse. But sometimes I couldn't find that one, but instead the first installment in the series, Who Are You, Stripy Horse? And there was a scene in there that always scared me as a kid. In this story, the titular horse gains sentience for the first time and doesn't know who he is or what his name is. Lampshade bird Muriel and the doorstop Herman suggest that they go to see Ming the White, a cat on a Chinese vase, to see if he could know. The gang all set off on an adventure through the shop, meeting more colourful characters along the way. And you're probably thinking, what about this is so scary? And to that I say, that isn't the scary part. Eventually, the gang reach the final part of their journey, the dangerous climb up the tall cabinet upon which Ming's vase is stored. Everyone climbs up Herman's back, or flies up in Muriel's case, and at last they make it. But then, the dragons guarding this vase stand attack, and this is what scared me as a kid. The dragons suddenly get quite huge compared to the other characters, and it scared me quite a bit. Eventually all the ruckus leads to one of the dragons getting Ming's vase knocked off and nearly killing him. Like, bro, you were meant to protect him, you had one job. Yes, moral of the story is that knowledge and wisdom aren't the same. I avoided the book for a while, and later completely forgot about it, until I tried to think of some more memories while writing this video's script. And finally, this one happened much later than the rest, when I was around 8, but it still kind of spooked me. In the bookshelf of the classroom in that year, there was a copy of a book called Mouse Look Out. It follows a mouse as it goes through an abandoned house, unaware that it is being chased by a cat. I read it a lot back then, although the detailed illustrations of the abandoned house always creeped me out quite a bit. My kid brain assumed that since the previous owners had left all of their possessions in the house, something must have happened to them that was so terrible they had no choice but to just up and run and leave everything behind. And that implication that my brain had just made up on its own always made me feel uneasy when I read the book. But the illustrations are still really good, and nonetheless I still couldn't really put it down whenever I saw it. Even to this day, I still sometimes find myself looking up pictures of abandoned buildings in the area just because I like the intrigue of those kinds of places. Although I'd never actually try urbexing for real, because that doesn't really seem safe. Like most of the other entries in this video, this one also took place when I was around 4 or 5. I was a bit excitable at that age. It was coming up to Christmas, an exciting and fun time for any kid. And Christmas is past Halloween, so that meant there was not going to be anything scary, right? Well, not exactly. One day, the Muppets' Christmas Carol came on TV, and my parents decided to have us all sit down together and watch it. Everything was alright, until the scene in which the two Marleys, portrayed by Statler and Waldorf, arrive. They come in and sing about how they were evil in life and now have to suffer in death, and that Scrooge is done for if he doesn't heed the warning. A 4-year-old me mixed up the memories of the fire burning out and the ghosts appearing and created an even scarier new scene where ghosts came out of the fire. For ages, I remember this movie as this creepy fever dream. I know, some people are gonna say, it's meant to be scary, they're scaring Scrooge straight. Try saying that a few times fast. And I understand that, but again, I was only 4 or 5 and hadn't studied the story for school, and thus couldn't have known the social context behind the story. I was also a bit creeped out by the ghost of Christmas Past, because at that time I knew that ghosts are the souls of dead people, and because this ghost looks like a child, I figured that they must have been some child who died. And if they could die that young, then so could I. This movie was meant to introduce kids to a classic tale, not make them ponder their own mortality at the age of 5. Because of all that jazz, I ended up having a bit of a fear surrounding ghosts and other non-corporeal entities as a young kid. But thankfully, I grew out of it and have since grown to enjoy A Christmas Carol, both the original novella and its near-infinite amount of rehashes. Due to this video getting a little bit longer than I anticipated, I'll split it into 2 parts. If part 2 isn't uploaded alongside this one, I'll upload it as soon as I can. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and see you in part 2.